When it started to get dark, my car stalled near the cemetery that was surrounded by terrifying rumors. Hearing a child's crying, I followed the sound, and what I saw almost paralyzed me. The sun was already setting as Gwen was returning home from the neighboring village. The road to her home took no more than 10 minutes in her old car, just 9 kilometers. But the road passed by the old cemetery. People used to tell all sorts of horrors about this place. Since childhood, Gwen had heard enough stories about resurrected Cossacks who had died in battles with the mountain folk, seeking righteous victims to spill their blood. About how the risen dead conducted terrifying rituals and ceremonies at their graves. Gwen was never a coward, unafraid of darkness and mythical creatures. The cemetery was on her right. It was getting darker, the sun gradually disappearing behind the mountain peaks, and it was getting chilly. Gwen turned on the headlights, illuminating the road. At that moment, the car unexpectedly stalled, and the woman looked around anxiously. In the evening twilight, crosses and monuments rose to the right. People who came to this area took care of the graves. Gwen futilely turned the key in the ignition, but the starter showed no signs of life. Annoyed, she got out of the car and opened the hood. Did the battery fail her? And then she heard a loud child's cry. The woman's heart was ready to stop. Could everything they said about the cemetery be true? All her life, she didn't believe in spirits and didn't believe now. But there, deep within the cemetery, a real child was indeed crying. Gathering her courage, she took a flashlight from the car and walked along the cemetery path, scanning the graves. Many of them were quite recent, the result of the past war. After walking a bit further, Gwen realized that the crying was coming from the left, closer to the edge, while she had been walking straight. So she turned left and walked alongside the fences toward the sound. By this time, it was completely dark. Gwen turned on the flashlight, illuminating her path, and walked toward the crying. Soon, she saw the scene. On a marble tombstone, a boy lay with his nose pressed against the cold stone. He had spread his arms wide, as if trying to embrace the grave as if it were a loved one. Bewildered, the woman froze, then took a step forward. A twig crunched under her foot. The child instantly jumped off the tombstone and stumbled backward, his back hitting the tall fence of a neighboring grave. In the beam of the flashlight, the woman saw that the boy was dressed in dirty, worn-out jeans and torn sneakers. His hair was cropped short but neatly. The child was dirty. The wary expression on the boy's face froze in anticipation of clearly something frightening. "Do not be afraid, little one," Gwen suddenly spoke gently. "What are you doing here? Where are you from?" The woman's strange accent and appearance made her stand out. What was she doing in the cemetery late in the evening? What could one expect from her? The boy remained silent, looking at the unfamiliar aunt who appeared out of nowhere. "What's your name? Where's your home?" Gwen spoke tenderly, trying to calm the frightened child. "You must be hungry, right? Maybe your relatives are looking for you?" "They're not looking." The boy wiped his tear-stained eyes with the sleeve of his torn shirt. "I don't have anyone." Gwen shone her flashlight on the monument. Mrs. White, born on the 18th of February, 1992, date of death 12th of November, 2017. 25 years old, the same age as her. Gwen felt a pang. The deceased mother of the boy had been her classmate. To say they were friends would be an overstatement. The girls kept to themselves at school, and Gwen went home right after classes. "Is your mom?" Gwen sympathetically asked. "My mom." "What's it to you?" the boy retorted. "Why be like that?" the woman gently scolded. "I want to help you." "How can you help?" "Send me back to the orphanage." "I won't go." "You ran away from the orphanage?" The woman was surprised. The nearest boarding school was in Uris Martin. If the child walked there, it would take at least a day. The boy remained silent. "Do not fear," Gwen spoke tenderly. "I won't send you to the boarding school. You're probably hungry, right? Come with me, I have a car nearby. We'll go to my place, I'll feed you, you can rest, and then we'll figure out what to do with you." The boy didn't move, still making up his mind. "Let's go," Gwen said warmly. "What's your name?" "Jimmy." The boy cautiously, as if on thin ice, took a step toward her. "I'm Gwen," the woman extended her hand. Jimmy cautiously circled his mother's tombstone and took Gwen's hand. Soon, they were standing by the car. Gwen opened the hood once again. Abandoning the car and walking on foot would not be a wise decision. They still had at least half the way to Gwen's house, and both of them were tired. "Come on, shine it here," Gwen handed the flashlight to the boy. She hadn't noticed any external damage that could have caused the engine to abruptly stop. Gwen sighed, sat behind the wheel, turned the key in the ignition without much hope, and to her relief, the engine started. Gwen got out of the car, closed the hood, looked at the boy who was still inexplicably shining the light on the car. "Get in the car." Gwen took the flashlight from him, got behind the wheel, and opened the passenger door. Jimmy obediently sat next to her and closed the door behind him. The car slowly started moving. Gradually picking up speed, it drove down the road. "Are you sure you're not taking me to the boarding school?" The boy broke the silence. "No, we're going to my home," Gwen replied, keeping her eyes on the road. "And your husband won't be angry?" he asked in a hushed voice for some reason. "He won't. I don't have a husband, he died 5 years ago. And my son too." The boy thought for a moment, doing some mental calculations. "You didn't have luck that year either," he said. "Either?" Gwen asked. Jimmy fell silent. They arrived at her house around midnight. Gwen parked the car in the garage and led the boy into the house. "The bathroom is there," she pointed to the white door. "Go wash up, I'll bring you a towel." Jimmy obediently headed to the bathroom. Gwen entered the room where her son Carl had slept just 3 years ago. She opened the closet, pulled out a tracksuit and a t-shirt belonging to her son. For a few minutes, she held the t-shirt in her hands, remembering how excited Carl had been about this clothing when they had just bought it. Gently knocking on the bathroom door, Gwen quietly placed the items and the towel on the shelf. "Get rid of your old clothes," she said. "Put these on." Then Gwen went to prepare dinner. An hour later, the washed and fed boy was fast asleep in her son's room. That night, Gwen couldn't fall asleep for a long time. She lay silently, recalling her family, who had died a terrible death on that blackest, most cursed day of her life. Tears choked her. Her husband Elon stood before her, holding tightly onto their son's hand. She remembered how the shelling of their city had unexpectedly started, how the gunfire began. Then came the sweep. They immediately found several people who had been hiding in their homes. The city was caught in a desperate shootout. The local commander ordered all the women to be sent home. Gwen ran home, where her 6-year-old son Carl remained, but she didn't make it in time. She couldn't remember how she had used her bare hands to push away the burning wooden frames and debris from the collapsed roof. How she had tried to clear the rubble with her bare hands to reach Carl, hoping he was still alive. Neighbors later told her that they had dragged her away several times, convincing her that it was too late. But she broke free again, pushing everyone aside and digging once more. Then the men arrived and retrieved his body. Seeing the lifeless body of her son, she sat right in the debris and covered her head with it, shuddering with sobs. The shell that destroyed her home had struck directly into the roof above the children's room, where her little boy Carl was. He died instantly. Trouble never comes alone. The news of Elon's death and the deaths of several brave soldiers became known half an hour after they had retrieved their son's body from under the rubble. Elon had worked in the police. When the bandits stormed the village, he didn't have time to call for backup. The communication was cut off. So Elon took a machine gun from the armory and, together with the local Cossacks, put up desperate resistance. But the gang was large, and ammunition only lasted for half an hour of fighting. Then the bandits simply fired several grenades from a launcher at the police station where Elon was holding the defense. Elon and his comrades died instantly. Grief had almost driven Gwen to madness. She had wanted to end her life. But her neighbor Maggie, whose house had miraculously survived, vigilantly watched over her and prevented her from doing it. Since then, Gwen only wears black clothing and a mourning veil. Then the soldiers came, drove the militants out of the village, and they fled to the mountains. The settlement was rebuilt quickly, in just 3 months. Gwen was given the keys to a new house, where she initially didn't want to be alone without her family. But life goes on. The wound in her soul hadn't healed, and it would never truly heal, but it had just receded into the background. And now the higher power had sent her this child. If he had come all the way from the boarding school in Urus Martin, he had traveled a long journey, a journey to her. Gwen's thoughts returned to the child. The poor little one had tasted sorrow from his earliest childhood. To be left without parents at such a young age was terrifying. What will happen now? What awaits him in the future? Gwen fell asleep. In the morning, she woke up to loud cries of a child. "Mom! Mom! Don't touch me!" Quickly getting out of bed, Gwen rushed to the children's room. The boy was thrashing about in bed and yelling in his sleep. Gwen approached the child and gently stroked his head. Jimmy opened his eyes, and in that moment, Gwen saw their depth. Jimmy's eyes were blue, like the sky. Not fully awake yet, he turned his head, realizing the reality. "Did you have a bad dream?" Gwen smiled at the little boy. "I have this dream all the time," Jimmy complained, sitting up in bed. "Those scary bearded men. They burst into our house and took Dad away. We never saw him again. And then they came again. Mom saw them through the window and told me to hide under the bed and not come out until the bandits left. They came in, immediately started demanding money. They said they had Dad, and if Mom didn't give them money, they'd kill Dad. But there was no money, and one of them pushed Mom hard. She fell and hit her head. And then the boy lowered his head, holding back tears. Then she died. The bandits left. Neighbors came running. The funeral. I lived with Miss Cooper, the neighbor. But then some people came and said that since I had no mom and dad, they'd take me to the orphanage. Was it bad for you in the orphanage? Gwen asked sympathetically. No, everyone there is like one family, everyone is like relatives. But I missed my mom a lot. I wanted to go to her grave. And you ran away? How did you manage to get here? The first time they caught me, someone saw me climbing over the fence and told the guard. He caught me and took me to the director. The director scolded me and told me not to run away. Did you tell him where you wanted to escape to? Gwen interrupted. Jimmy looked up at her with his blue eyes, his gaze steady. I didn't tell him, but he found out somehow. He told me that running away wouldn't change anything and that I should be patient, that life would get better. Life will get better, Gwen repeated softly. You're safe here, Jimmy. Yes, the boy nodded. I told him everything. He said I would go to my mom when I grow up. But that's a long time, and I needed it now. Also, they took me to a doctor because of these dreams, a psychiatrist. He said I didn't need treatment, that I was healthy, and the dreams would fade with time. And that's it? Gwen exclaimed. Yes. And when we left the doctor's office, the driver went for cigarettes, and Miss Torres, she made a call and talked for a long time. I quietly got out of the car and ran away. Do you call them moms there? Gwen was surprised. Yes, they all together tried to be like our moms. But nobody can replace my mom, the boy swallowed. So, how did you get to the cemetery? The woman asked. I walked for a long time, saw people on the way, begged for food. And didn't anyone think to take you back to the orphanage? There was a woman, she was angry. She had such scary eyes. I asked for bread, and she grabbed me and said they were looking for me, that she saw it on TV. And she would take me to the orphanage now. I struggled, but she was very strong. Look, Jimmy pulled up his sleeve, and Gwen saw bruises and scratches on his pale skin. I screamed that they were trying to kidnap me, called the police. Then she loosened her grip a bit, and I escaped. They are looking for you, Gwen said. Jimmy jumped off the bed and knelt down. Aunt Gwen, please don't send me to the orphanage. Can I just go away? Calm down and stand up, Gwen stroked his head. You're not going anywhere, you'll live here. But can I go to the cemetery? Yes, you can, but don't lie on the stones, that's not allowed. You could get sick. People usually shouldn't visit cemeteries without a specific reason, so Gwen had brought the boy to the cemetery and stayed in the car herself. Gwen hadn't grown up in a particularly religious family, and she hadn't been taught prayers. So, she asked the higher power to help her make a decision and guide her actions. When she saw Jimmy returning, she quickly took out wet wipes and wiped his tear-streaked face. The boy got into the car, and the woman started the engine. Both of them fell into silence. Jimmy, I need to talk to you, the woman suddenly broke the silence. The boy remained silent. Gwen stopped the car and looked at him. Jimmy calmly and even indifferently stared ahead. Despite his 11 years, his gaze seemed mature. Jimmy, Gwen took his hand in hers, both you and I have been through a lot. The words came out with difficulty, Gwen had to push them out of herself. You lost your parents, and I lost my husband and son. My Carl was your age mate. I went to school with your mom in the same class. I even have photographs. Really? Jimmy perked up. Yes, Gwen confirmed. Jimmy, you can stay with me forever. I can never replace your mother, but I'll do my best to be that for you. A smile of joy lit up the boy's face. But there's one problem, Gwen said. I need to inform your orphanage that you're with me. Suddenly, Jimmy's face clouded. He abruptly pulled his hand out of Gwen's grip, opened the door, and ran out. Gwen followed him. Jimmy, wait. Where are you going? The boy turned around. You're lying. You just want to send me back to the orphanage. If that's the case, just say I'm bothering you. She's just telling me fairy tales. With these words, Jimmy turned and ran across the step. Jimmy, stop. Gwen shouted. There's a cliff. Without thinking, she ran after him. Running in a long skirt was uncomfortable, but Gwen ran as fast as she could. Suddenly, Jimmy screamed and disappeared. For a moment, Gwen stopped, feeling a sense of dread, then she sped forward again. It was a stroke of luck, nothing else. A cliff into a deep pit was about 5 meters away from her, and ahead of her was a large crater from a past war. The crater wasn't very deep, but right in its center lay a stone block. As Jimmy fell into the pit, he struck his leg against the stone and cried out in pain. Gwen carefully descended, the pit reaching her chest, though she wasn't very tall. Where does it hurt? The woman touched the boy's bloody leg. Looks like a fracture. Gwen tried to lift him onto her arms, but he was too heavy for her. Just a moment, hold on. She struggled to climb out of the pit. She didn't know what to do. Her first thought was to call for help, and that thought seemed like a lifeline. Gwen dashed onto the road. Luck was on her side as a car was approaching. She frantically waved at it. The car stopped, and a young man with a black beard and glasses jumped out. What? What happened? He asked with concern. Over there. Tears welled up in Gwen's eyes, but she pointed towards the crater. The boy. The man hurried in that direction. A minute later, Jimmy was back on the surface, the man carrying him towards the road. After examining his leg, the man took off his glasses and wearily wiped his eyes. Looks like a fracture, he said. We need to immobilize it quickly. Immobilize? How? Gwen asked. Bring those branches over there. The man pointed at some stacked branches. Gwen complied. While she fetched the branches, the man retrieved a seatbelt from his car's trunk, which seemed to be serving as a makeshift rope. He took off his belt, placed the branches on the boy's broken leg, and tightly bound it with the belt. There we go, now we need to get him to the hospital, he ordered, lifting Jimmy and placing him on the back seat of his car. I'll follow you, Gwen declared, getting behind the wheel of her car. The rescuer turned out to be a new trauma doctor. He swiftly brought Jimmy to the hospital, carrying him in his arms into the building. He asked Gwen to wait in the corridor while they completed the procedures. As they took x-rays and applied a cast, Gwen felt like a rock had been lifted from her chest. An hour later, the doctor emerged with the boy on crutches in the corridor. Gwen's relief was palpable. "Well, there you go," the doctor said cheerfully. "A minor fracture. We did the x-ray and applied a cast. You'll be on crutches for a couple of months. When we remove the cast, we'll prescribe some physical therapy with an instructor. Then it'll heal, and you'll be running races, but only in designated areas. And listen to your mom, no more running away. All right?" The doctor gently patted Jimmy's head. "She's not my mom," the boy declared. "Not your mom?" The doctor was surprised. "Yes, I found this boy last night in the graveyard," Gwen explained. The puzzled doctor removed his glasses. "Interesting. What were you doing there at the graveyard at night?" he asked. Gwen realized the absurdity of her previous statement and felt embarrassed. "I was driving back home from my parents. They live in the neighboring town," she explained. "My car suddenly stopped. I got out to see what was wrong, and I heard crying. That's how I found Jimmy." "I see," the doctor said. "And what are your plans for him?" "I want to adopt him," Gwen said. "That's remarkable. So, you're an orphan?" The doctor addressed Jimmy with a playful tone. "Not anymore. I have Aunt Gwen," Jimmy replied. "Well then, it's a pleasure to meet you, Gwen," the doctor turned to the woman. "Yes, Gwen," she confirmed. "I'm Dr. Howard," he introduced himself. "You know, my aunt in town is a lawyer. If you need any help, I can ask her to assist you with the adoption process." "Thank you so much, but we have to go now. Goodbye." "Let's go, Jimmy." Gwen turned to the boy. Soon, the entire village was buzzing with talk about Gwen adopting a Christian boy. Many approved of her decision, but there were those who thought it was not proper for her to do so. With time, Jimmy's leg healed, and he became friends with the boys from the neighborhood, playing and running around the village streets. Gwen began the process of adoption, collecting the necessary documents. According to the laws, she could adopt Jimmy if she complied with the required paperwork. She decided to seek advice from her neighbor Scarlett, who was much older and experienced in life. Upon learning about Gwen's intention to adopt the boy, Scarlett was horrified. "Gwen, he's not one of us. If you raise him as your own son and adopt him, you will give him your last name," Scarlett insisted. "Is there a way out of this situation?" Gwen asked. "I don't know," Scarlett replied curtly. So, the young woman went to the judge. He listened to Gwen and responded, "Everyone who advises you against adopting the boy is wrong. However, if you want my opinion, I suggest you consider legal guardianship instead. It's simpler. You won't impose your surname on him and won't change his lineage, but the orphan will grow up in your house just as he would if adopted." Gwen inquired, "And what if the child is uncertain?" "Nothing to worry about. With time, as he grows up, he'll choose his own path. Your task is to help him avoid the heavy fate of an orphan." At her doorstep, Gwen found an unfamiliar man and two women waiting for her. Seeing them, a chill ran down her spine. "Hello," the man addressed her. "Are you Gwen?" "Yes, hello," the woman replied, feeling cold inside. She realized who the guests were. "I'm Mr. Brown, the director of the first orphanage. Our boy is with you." "Yes, please come inside," Gwen invited them. The guests followed her into the house. Gwen offered them tea, which they politely declined. "So, I understand you've come for him?" Gwen asked. "Well, yes, essentially," Mr. Brown shrugged. "Is there a possibility to let the child stay with me?" Gwen inquired. "There is," one of the women answered. "You need to either adopt him or establish legal guardianship." "I was planning to establish guardianship," Gwen said. Well, then gather the documents, said the administrator. I see that you have suitable conditions to care for the child, which is already good. However, while the child is under the guardianship of the state, he must stay at the orphanage. Especially since autumn is coming, and it's time for school. Until you become the legal guardian, you won't be able to enroll him in school here. Gwen remained silent, her heart and lips frozen in despair. At that moment, Archie, a boy from the neighborhood, entered the house. Mom, he addressed Gwen, who are these people? The administrator's expression changed. Wait a moment, I don't understand. Is this the boy? And didn't you recognize him? Gwen asked in surprise, realizing the children's clever game. This is not ours, the administrator glanced at his subordinates. They stood frozen in amazement. But he's mine, Gwen declared, her heart rejoicing. The guests left without a word. Gwen looked at Archie. Thank you. But you understand that lying is bad, right? They will find out sooner or later, regardless. Well, this is a lie for a good cause, Archie shrugged. There's no such thing as lying for a good cause, Gwen said didactically. Remember that. Where's Jimmy? He's at our place. Go get him, I'll make you some tea. Archie ran off and returned with Jimmy after 5 minutes. Gwen approached the local administration's chairman, where she had worked as an accountant for 10 years. He didn't refuse, and within a week, the guardianship documents were assembled. She was driven to the district center, where she submitted the paperwork to the guardianship authorities. A month later, Gwen became Jimmy's full legal guardian. One day, coming home from work, Gwen saw a luxurious bouquet of roses in a vase. Who brought these? She asked the boy. Mr. Howard, Jimmy replied. He visited us, the woman exclaimed in surprise. No, he stood by the gate, gave me the roses, asked me to give them to you. And then he left. Such an eccentric, Gwen inhaled the scent of the roses. And the roses are beautiful. He whispered to me that he's going to propose to the elders of your clan. I see you've become friends? Gwen chuckled, her cheeks flushed. Good morning. Gwen prepared an omelet for breakfast. Good morning. Mr. Howard kissed his wife. There's such a wonderful aroma in the house that I couldn't help but wake up. Is Jimmy still asleep? Gwen poured hot water into the teapot with tea, finishing the breakfast preparation. Yes, he is. You know, the psychologist helped, he no longer screams in his sleep. You noticed that too? Yes. After all that this child has been through. Well, it will all get better now. Of course, it will get better. It's time to wake him up. Wake him up for school, or he'll be late. Gwen left the kitchen, and Mr. Howard quietly followed. Through the slightly ajar door, Gwen watched Jimmy sleeping. His breathing was steady, and a happy smile played on his face. Let him sleep a bit more, he'll make it to school, Gwen whispered to her husband and closed the door. I'll take him there, Mr. Howard sat at the kitchen table. You know, I've been thinking, we should move your parents into our house. It's not good for them to be over there while we're here. I've been thinking the same thing, Gwen poured the tea. We should address this tomorrow. Outside the window, the sun was rising over the mountains.